Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I am your host, the One Take Man. I have to admit I had another video planned for this week. However, I didn't really like the way the script was going, so instead I decided I'd do something else. Namely, I would go on bracketfights.com and fill out one particular bracket. And it just so happened that the bracket I found and thought would be fun to fill up was WWE Superstars Greatest of All Time Bracket Fight. For those of you who don't know Bracket Fight, it's affiliated with Tiermaker, I think. And the basic idea is that you get a whole bunch of figures here, and you get to decide who is better than who. Or you're given a bracket and then you move people up it according to how good you think they are, whether or not you think they are better than others, than their competitors. And this one happens to be filled out with WWE superstars. I actually wanted to do something similar to this a while back. Namely, I wanted to tell you about how I would build my my ideal wrestling roster. The thing is, I had a lot of trouble scripting that, so instead I'm going to use this to kind of approximate it. Well, we'll just say that the first round, round of 32, will consist of the tryouts for the for my promotion. So everyone who wins is basically guaranteed a spot. And then as you go further through the rounds, you will know what I value most in a wrestler, or most in my potential talents. So with that disclaimer and intro out of the way, let's actually get this party going. We got here round one, match one, Bruno Sammartino versus Bob Backlund. I got nothing against Bob Backlund, but Bruno Sammartino is a living legend, so not having him around is a major shame. So Bruno Sammartino moving ahead. Next up, round one, match two, Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage. This might surprise some of you. I'm gonna go with Randy Savage. Hulk Hogan can work well. I will admit that, and he's extraordinarily charismatic. That is also something I will admit. But he also has a massive ego, and he is very much, and a lot of his later career has been marred by him meddling behind the scenes and making himself seem much more important than he actually is. So, Hulkster, bye bye. Your ego would be too would be too big and too overbearing in my promotion. Randy Savage, you can stay. Next up, we got Ultimate Warrior and Andre the Giant. The choice is obvious, Andre the Giant. He is spectacular, not just to look at, but also in the ring. But he is still very much down to earth. He was very much, a people's person. He knew how to approach people who were kind of scared of his size. The Ultimate Warrior was just kind of way too chaotic, way too scary. Next up, we got round one, match four. Rowdy Roddy Piper versus Bret the Hitman Hart. Well, Rowdy Roddy Piper is, I will say he has a cool gimmick, and he plays it very well, both in and out of the ring. However, Bret Hart is the excellence of execution. The best there was, the best there is, the best there ever will be. Like, he can put on a great match with basically anyone. So yeah. I want him in my promotion over Piper, definitely. Next up, we got Ric Flair versus Diesel. Two major egos right here. Not gonna lie. So that being said, I want to go with the guy who can work better, and that is Ric Flair. Ric Flair moves ahead. Next up, match 6, I think. We got Shawn Michaels versus Mankind. or Mick Foley. And I just say Mick Foley is the nicest man in pro wrestling, and is he also is very dedicated to his to his craft. Like you can expect him to do whatever is needed in order to get the product over. That being said, Shawn Michaels is has his reputation as kind of a backstage prima donna, but that was more the first part of his career. For the latter half, he actually was a very impressive downward performer who cleaned up his act and actually proved himself uh, to still go in the ring and put on great matches. So for that reason, Shawn Michaels gets ahead. Mick Foley might still get might still get some behind the scenes role, maybe occasionally also show up on camera. Next up, we got Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Big Show, or the Big Show. I have to applaud the Big Show for managing to be such a chameleon and for managing to find his niche in pro wrestling for over a quarter of a century and staying relevant for as long as he has. However, Stone Cold Steve Austin was the biggest draw in WWE history, arguably the biggest draw in pro wrestling history of all time. And if it weren't for his neck injury, he might have had a longer, more active, and a better, more work oriented career. So for that reason, Stone Cold Steve Austin goes to the next round. Next up, round 1, match 8. The Undertaker versus Kane. A classic mashup. Well, I will say one of these guys is in the Hall of Fame and the other one isn't. But that is not the sole thing that really justifies my decision. My decision is based more on who can work their gimmick better and also who has a better reputation, behind the scenes, and actually both of these guys are pretty good in that regard. However, I also have to look at at their work rate, and from that point of view, I think it's safe to say that the Undertaker is a better performer. So for that reason, the Undertaker moves on to the round of 16. Moving on, round of 32, match 9, we've got The Rock, or Dwayne Johnson as he's known now, versus Eddie Guerrero. And in a move that will surprise absolutely everybody, I'm putting Guerrero over. Because he's had a longer and more a longer and not necessarily more prolific career, but certainly a more entertaining career. And if Eddie had the same booking The Rock would have had, and also the same level of physical treatment available, the same amount of money invested in him, he would have been at least as good as The Rock. So for that reason, Eddie Guerrero goes over. Next up, match 10, we got Jeff Hardy versus Goldberg. Goldberg is interesting as a spectacle, not necessarily as a performer. He has a good look, and he is capable of putting on a decent match when he has to. But Jeff can put a great match, and maybe not against everybody, but when he's up against an opponent who can who is legit as skilled and as talented, at least as skilled and as talented as he is, what comes out of it is absolutely magic. Also, he has a better control of in-ring psychology, even though his outside ring shenanigans are a bit wild. I have, however, been led to believe that he's calmed down since. Also, please ignore the all the odds that are on the screen around around this bracket. Next up, match 11, we got Chris Jericho versus Rey Mysterio. This This, I have to admit, is a really tough one, but ultimately I have to say Chris Jericho goes over. Ray, they have had similar, they have had similar careers. They are similarly good on the mic and in the ring. However, when it comes to working in gimmick, Ray can really only do himself well, whereas Jericho is basically whatever you need him to be. Whatever you need him to be. You want a cocky, cowardly heel, he can be that. You want someone who is generally sadistic and frightening, he can do that. You want him to be a warm and welcoming babyface, he can do that. You want a sarcastic babyface, he can do that too. So for that, Chris Jericho moves ahead. Next up, we got probably the most difficult match of this first round. Edge versus Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle is one of the most prolific wrestlers in history, but then again, so is Edge. And when it comes to gimmicks, I think ultimately I think that is where the major difference maker. What gimmicks they've embodied and how they can embody them. Overall, I think the edge there goes to Kurt Angle. Edge can really only be Edge can really only be either very crazy or very controlled. He doesn't really have a more human side that really can showcase more grit and more desperation, at least not in an approachable way. Whereas Kurt does, which is why Kurt moves ahead. Next up, we got John Cena against Brock Lesnar. And controversial move, but Cena goes over. Brock Lesnar is better in ring, I will say that. But Cena has better charisma. He has not necessarily a better gimmick, but he is better at managing his own gimmick and his own appearance. And also he's very much a company man. Like he loves this product, he loves this industry. He is more reliable. And when it comes to good matches, you also have that. Maybe not to the same extent as Lesnar, but you still have it with Cena. Next up, we got match 14, if I'm not mistaken. Triple H versus Randy Orton. Now, when it comes to Triple H, you have to talk about backstage politicking. As someone who could reasonably be described as a Marxist, I actually think backstage politicking isn't a dirty word. To some extent, I think it is actually necessary. Like, wrestling is long overdue a wrestlers' union, for example, and and I think giving wrestlers more say in their in their gimmicks and in how they manage their appearance, and then also in how they use their appearance and their gimmicks and their reputations is a is a valuable thing. However, Triple H pretty much proves why it's a bad thing because he has always used his formidable push to mostly his formidable influence to push either himself or his friends. However, put other people over whenever he thought it was the right time. Thing is, I don't want anyone else to rely on having to pal up with him. He might still get a backstage role, but that's about it. Randy Orton, however, is much more composed as far as I've been able to tell, and he has a better work rate. So for that reason, or a more effective work rate. For that reason, I think Orton goes over. Next up, another match that should not take place in the round of 32, but whatever. We got CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan. They're both pretty good with their gimmicks. They are both excellent in the ring. But I think Daniel Bryan just pushes Punk out when it comes to both of these. They are both good at it, but Bryan is just a little bit better. Punk can still have a behind the scenes and an occasional performer role, but if I'm looking at who I want to be in the company full time, then yeah, Daniel Bryan deserves a spot. Next up, we've got the final match of the round of 32, match 16, Roman Reigns versus Booker T. Now, if we were to look solely at their WWE careers, Roman Reigns definitely wins. He's been he's been killing it lately with his tribal chief gimmick, and Booker T in the WWE only really has King Booker as his as his highlight. But if we are to look at his entire career, where he held tag team gold, singles gold, that actually I must say that that adds up to a lot. Still not a lot. Still not enough to really become one of the tentpoles of the company where he held a lot of world championships, but still a lot. Is it enough, however, to overcome Roman? Regrettably, I think the answer is no. I think Roman still has more potential than Booker T has managed to show, and for that reason, I'm putting Roman over. And that was the round of 32. Let's now go into the round of 16. And we got match 1, Bruno Sammartino versus Randy Savage. Again, Bruno Sammartino is a living legend. You cannot, you're not making a mistake if you're getting them there. He has a good work rate, and he has a great respect for this industry and for the people who work with him. You can say that the same. You can say the same thing about Randy Savage, and also I think he has a better worker and can put on better matches. So for that reason, I'm gonna push Savage over Sammartino. Next up, we've got Andre the Giant versus Bret Hart. Well, I've already said that Andre is basically excellent when it comes to dealing with audiences. However, Bret is the excellence of execution. He's a guy who can put on great matches with almost anyone, and that makes him overall, I think, more interesting. So Bret is going over Andre. Sorry to all the Andre fans out there. Next up, we got Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels. Both of these have been wild playboys in their youth, but they've had career resurgences in the after everyone thought they were done, and they were done, and they both had and were both tremendously successful afterwards. So it's quite fitting that these two get to face off. Overall, I think Shawn Michaels has a better work rate, is capable of putting on better matches against more people, and it is for this reason that Shawn Michaels advances to the quarterfinal. Next up, we've got Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker. Everything I said about both of these guys is still true. They both have excellent gimmicks. They both have great presences. And while Stone Cold Steve Austin is still the greatest draw, I think I think Undertaker is more interesting a character and will make for more interesting matchups in the future. So for that reason, Austin loses to The Undertaker. Next up, we've got Eddie Guerrero versus Jeff Hardy. Guerrero goes over. He's a better technical wrestler. He has more charisma, and he is more capable of making people either side with him or hate him. He is more capable of drawing attention. Even though Jeff Hardy does some outlandish things, overall Guerrero is more of a natural in that regard. So for that reason, Guerrero goes over. Next up, we've got Chris Jericho versus Kurt Angle. Another tough matchup. A lot of tough matchups in the on this side of the bracket. And overall, I have to say, well, I think Angle is somewhat better as a worker. When it comes to gimmicks, I think Chris Jericho has him beat. So for that reason, Jericho goes over. Not just gimmicks, not just all the gimmicks he had, but also his work with his gimmicks is better, which is why he goes to the quarterfinals. Okay, next up, round of 16, match 7, John Cena versus Randy Orton. They are both company men. They are both loyal to the business. They both love the industry. Only one of them is more interesting as a performer, and the guy who is more interesting as a performer is this guy. So Randy Orton moves ahead to the quarterfinals. And last but not least, in the round of 16, we got Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns. Bryan moves over, or rather goes over. He has more heart and he has more technical ability, and I think he can put on better matches with more people over a longer period of time. So Daniel Bryan to the quarterfinals, and now that we've reached the quarterfinals, we got Randy Savage versus Bret Hart. This is tough because a lot of what makes these guys good is also what makes them kind of samey. So I have to look at what distinguishes them, and what distinguishes them is basically their gimmicks. Macho Man has overall had better gimmicks, whereas Bret Hart can really only play himself well. So therefore, the question arises: does the difference can Hart's difference in ability counter in ability in the ring counter Randy Savage's ability on the mic? Overall, I have to say the answer is no. I'm sorry, Bret, but Randy Savage is the first of the final 4. Moving on, we got Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. This match occurred twice with these guys both being at what I would call their prime, and I won't say who won on both occasions, but I will still say it made for some great matches. But we're not looking for great matches. We're looking for great characters and great performers. And while last time I went for gimmick over ability, this time, sorry, I have to go with ability over gimmick. So Shawn Michaels is the second semifinalist of my bracket. Next up, we've got Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Jericho, 2 vanilla midgets, as Kevin Nash would call them. But then again, Kevin Nash isn't even has lost in his first round, so his opinion doesn't matter. So, and they are also both great all-rounders. They have great in-ring work and have great great gimmick work. They have great or should I say mic and crowd work. They can get you excited for a match before the match even starts in more ways than I can count. So, who is the overall better package? I will say that it will be Chris Jericho. I think he's had a longer staying power, and he's been able to diversify his range much more. So, for that reason, Chris Jericho is the third semifinalist. And now for the last semifinalist, we got Randy Orton versus Daniel Bryan. This one's a doozy. I have to say I like Orton. His style is a bit too safe, but it is still interesting to watch. and and I think he works his gimmick very well. But overall, I think the advantage still goes to Daniel. He's more versatile, and while his shtick of being extremely hyper kind of wears thin after a while, I think he can still make up for it with a difference in wrestling ability. So Daniel Bryan is the last of the final four. And so here we have them: Randy Savage, Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels, and Daniel Bryan, the final four. These are the guys who I would definitely build my wrestling company around. Now it's time to determine which of them is which of them is more deserving of being the tentpole of the company. I don't really like tentpole booking, but structure is pretty much built around it, so let's go with that. First semifinal is between Randy Savage and Shawn Michaels. This is tricky because I think I've already made clear what is interesting to me, what I want to see from a performer, and both of these guys embody it very well. Overall, however, I think Sean can come across as more naturalistic. So while Savage's flamboyance makes him an interesting character, I think Sean's more naturalistic approach is more beneficial long term for the company, for the audience, and for himself. So for that reason, Shawn Michaels moves on to the final. And on the other side of the bracket, we got Chris Jericho versus Daniel Bryan. So once again, we got a great all-rounder with a wide variety of gimmicks versus a great specialist. Then again, Daniel Bryan being a specialist is kind of me underselling him, because it's only when it comes to his wrestling style that he's really a specialist. He is much more of a submission wrestler than really anything else. He doesn't really have a lot of power moves, so to speak, but he is an excellent striker, and doesn't really do any high flying, not anymore. Overall, I think he still has a kind of a balanced style. Maybe not as much as Jericho, but overall, he still has a more limited gimmick repertoire. Still, I think he can mesh styles with pretty much anyone, and with not necessarily with more people than Jericho, but I think he can push all those people he is actually fighting with to get better matches. So by a hair's length, Daniel Bryan moves on to the finals. And here we have the final. This is me choosing the first champion of my promotion, or the guy who will get have either the most or the longest reigns. The guy who will become the figurehead of the promotion, at least in the beginning. And we got a choice between an all-rounder with a singular but versatile gimmick versus a specialist actually a lot, somewhat of a versatility of gimmicks, but not a lot of versatility when it comes to mic work. So who do I pick between these two? Overall, I have to say I think when it comes to looking at development and at progress and at capturing the attention and the interest of a general audience, the winner has to be Sean. It was really freaking close. But overall, I think he has overall, I think he grant more utility to his company, and overall, I think he has a better chance of being a memorable a memorable wrestler, and someone who can really elevate not just and can really elevate the company as alongside the rest of the roster. And yeah, this is my bracket of the greatest WWE superstars. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know why, and let me know which points you disagree. Congrats to Sean if he needs them. And if you've been able to stick around for as long as you have, then let me just say thank you very much for your attention. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave it a like. If you have something to add, the comment section awaits your input. And if you want to see when the next video comes out, then I suggest you go ahead and subscribe. Maybe also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you so you get notified. Until then, I have been the One Take Man.